Hey, it's April 18th, and we find ourselves back in the Psalms, specifically Psalms 17, 35, 54, and 63. These are Psalms that David wrote either during or about the events that we read about in 1 Samuel 25 through 27. In these Psalms, the main theme is how God fights for David. David doesn't need to fight for himself. He can trust that God will bring about perfect justice, while David can focus on his greatest need, worshiping his God. In Psalm 17, verse 1, David cries out to God for help. He says, "Hear a just cause, O Lord, attend to my cry. From your presence let my vindication come." Because in verses 3 through 5, God knows what's happening to David is not a result of David's own sin. David says, verse 3, "You have tried my heart. You have visited me by night. You have tested me, and you will find nothing." Verse 5, "My steps have held fast to your paths. My feet have not slipped." And in verses 6 through 8, David knows that God will protect him. And in verses 9 through 15, we see that the wicked's rewards are the temporary things of this world that they enjoy, but then just pass on to their children when they die. However, David's reward is being with God in heaven for all eternity. Verse 15 says, "As for me, I shall behold your face in righteousness. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness." In Psalm 35, verses 1 through 6, David again asks God to fight his battles, and in verses 7 through 10, he acknowledges that he has done no harm to his enemies, and asks that their plans actually backfire on them. In verse 8, in the second half, it says, "Let the net that he hid for David ensnare him. Let him fall into it to his destruction, because after all, it's God who helps the helpless." Verses 11 through 16 describe how the wicked repay kindness with evil. Has this ever happened to you? It's happened to me. But this reminds me of Nabal and Saul as they were repaying David's kindness with evil. So David asks in verses 17 through 28 that the truth be known to all, and that God receive the praise when he brings about justice. David wrote Psalm 54 about when the Ziphites ratted him out to Saul. David again cries out to God, prays that God will turn the wicked's plans back on themselves, and he says he will praise God for his deliverance from his enemies when that happens. And finally, Psalm 63, which David wrote about when he was in the wilderness of Judah, David declares that his desire to worship God is just as necessary as any of life's basic needs. In fact, in verse 1 he says, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you as in a dry and weary land where there is no water." So what can we take away from today's passage? When things were going against David, first, he made sure that it wasn't because of something he did. And second, he cried out to God for protection, deliverance, and justice. We saw that worshiping God was just as necessary to David as food and water, and that David was focused on his eternity in heaven with God, not his present circumstances. My prayer for us today is that worshiping God is our most essential need. That when bad things happen, we can honestly say it's not our fault and cry out to and trust God for protection, deliverance, and justice. That no matter what life looks like, we are looking forward to our eternity in heaven with God because of what Jesus did for us on the cross. As Paul said in Colossians 3, "If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on the things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory." If you haven't already done so, please download our Through the Bible reading plan at aspericommunitychurch.org/throughthebible. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.